Good morning. Welcome to yet another wonderful week. A magical Monday it is indeed. And let's start our journey with the Power of Dreams programming. Let's start. Welcome back. So today we've been studying this last 1 month about scanners, and variety of scanners is what we've been doing for the last few weeks. Today we're going to discuss the different types of scanners, the different variety or types which you can see. And today is about discovering what is a plate scanner. So we've discussed about double agent, we've discussed about Cybele, and today we'll talk about the plate scanner, the plate spinner. What is that plate spinner? So let's understand about that. So chapter number 12 today, and we are right here. It says, are you a plate spinner? Ed Sullivan used to have a man on his show who would put a plate on a pole, started spinning, and hoist it up in the air. Then he'd put a plate on another pole and another until he had 5 or 6 plates spinning at the same time. I've always thought of myself as spinning plates like he did. I have several dreams and I try to keep them all organized. I have a paper diary, electronic diary, to-do list, electronic organizers, but none of them work. I'm more of a minute-to-minute person. Throw something at me and I can always catch it. I'm the fixer at work. I like the challenge, but it doesn't leave any time for my own projects. Are you a plate spinner? Do you often come up with solutions to problems faster than most people? Do you enjoy the challenge of keeping lots of projects going on at once? Do you find it hard to say no when people ask you for help? Do you like learning only when it solves problems, not for its own sake? Does it feel good to be needed, to feel you're making a difference? Have you ever felt that your abilities have trapped you into a smaller life than you could be leading? If you have said yes, plate spinner, you're energized by having many things going on at the same time, but you're not a typical multitasker who solves the overload by giving only part of attention to each task until she gets frazzled and inefficient. Doing many things at once is the first choice of a plate spinner, and when you move fast, you don't feel rushed. Plate spinners are rarely overwhelmed because, for the most part, they think faster than the other people. And like the samurai in a Japanese film, a plate spinner is working on two levels: the task at hand and the task of sharpening coordination. You work on big projects at the same time. When the biographer Stuart Gilbert asked James Joyce which chapter of his classic novel Ulysses he was working on at the moment, like a true plate spinner, Joyce answered, all of them. For you, satisfaction comes from solving problems. Often for other people, you're generous with help because it bothers you to see someone struggling with a problem you can easily fix. People depend upon you, they often take advantage of you too. You might not think about it much, but you are capable of an entirely different and deeper kind of thought. You tend to neglect it, however, not because you have too much work, but because non-directed thinking doesn't seem as important as problem solving. I need real world problems to solve. Liam, an information technologist, told me learning for its own sake is what vacations are for. Problem solving is paid him well when you are as good as Liam at devising new systems with one hand and putting out fires with the other. You'll always be too useful to others to do much else. And although you may work long hours, it feels good to know the place couldn't run without you. But sometimes Liam, like many bait spinners, thinks about all his other sides, the ones he never gets to use. Today's workplace doesn't value anyone with a wide view. They seem as a troubleshooter, plain and simple. Liam said, he's presently system analyst at a major software company. There's no way in the world I'll get the chance to use my abilities at work. What would you like to do if you had more time? I asked. All kinds of things, he said. I really enjoyed helping a friend's teenager to do her math with this weekend. I had to figure out exactly what she wasn't getting. It was a real challenge, but then I understood she had math mixed up with all unsolvable problems. Being a teenager, she had a lot of those. I had to figure out how to show her that some problems could be solved, and with math, the answer was guaranteed to be right. It was exciting. When she got it, I almost started laughing. I was so happy. You don't really get to use a brain of yours very much, do you? I asked. He replied, excuse me? That's all I do. I'm worked to death. I hardly get home. I solve every kind of problem that's thrown at me during my work day, and my work day is sometimes 10 hours long. How can you even say that I don't even get to use my brain? So she says, I don't think you often get to use the part of your brain that makes you happy enough to laugh, like you did with your friend's kid, I said. Here he was silent for a moment. Well, maybe so. He had into the trace of weariness. And here we find the plate spinner's real problem. They have a wide variety of talents that go unused, and that disuse is draining. Hard work doesn't bother a spinner. Liam works too many hours, but he can do twice the brain work of most people without breaking a sweat and enjoys pushing his limits, but too much of the same kind of problem solves, creating a type of vitamin deficiency in someone like Liam. It's true that I'm not as relaxed or playful as I used to be, he admitted. One woman said it very clearly. If I keep using only one part of myself, I get worn out. Some parts of me is bored, even if I'm fully engaged. And that's their dilemma. Because they're rarely asked to employ all the talents, spinners are in the odd position of being both busy and bored, overworked and underused. I couldn't help wondering what ideas Liam would play with if he had time. So try and see yourselves that are you in this world where people are taking advantage of you? You're a real helping person. You have all the solutions even before people are asking you for it, and how dependable they become on you. And do you like being dependable? But there comes a time when you feel saturated and you're like, I'm done. I just same thing over and over again, because your entire mind is full of creativity and only one part of it is being used. So as they said, that you could be overworked yet underused. So if that is you, see if that's you. And if it isn't, just do it like a human thesis study, like something like that. Do you have time for yourself? If you're a great problem solver, you might be depriving yourself of all the other kind of thinking your brain longs for. Do you agree with Leanne that problem solving is the only worthwhile activity for you? Read this story. from another spinner named Donna and see what you think of the outcome. Everyone at the school and the church got so accustomed to having me solve problems, they took it for granted. They loaded me up and they figured there was nothing to do it when I bailed them out in a tough situation. You'd be surprised how rarely I got a thank you instead. I'd get impatience that I didn't do a job faster. Nonna wrote to me. She was everyone's favorite volunteer because, like so many spinners, she loves to make things work, pull rabbits out of hats, and create last-minute miracles. If it weren't for the lack of appreciation and the heavy load of work, people automatically dropped her at her door. I think Donna would have given every spare minute to her volunteer efforts. But one day, she pulled back and she started taking time for herself. I would never have said no if they hadn't taken advantage and been so unappreciative. But I would have done it myself. This feels like just a luxury, like I'm wasting time or something, but that's not right. I forgot how much I loved sitting around and thinking, she said. What was Donna thinking about? Everything, anything. I love to learn means from books, magazines, or the back of breakfast cereal boxes, and that means thinking. When I cook or clean the house to go walking, I think almost the entire time. When I drew as a kid, I was thinking about what to draw. When I did magic tricks, I would want to think about how they worked. I love thinking about math. I love to solve mostly 3D type of puzzles, which involve thinking and rotating images in my mind. It's like being a kid playing outside when I'm not locked into a superficial level of practical problem solving, and it feels good. Like my muscles feel when I go running. How about you? Do you really enjoy recreational thinking? Do you worry that maybe it's not allowed because it doesn't solve important problems? If you weren't spinning so many plates and solving so many problems, what would your brain enjoy doing? Now, to understand this, let's try this simple but very effective fantasy exercise. Now, we all have a scanner day books. We can pull them out today and with a pen and see if you can find 10 or 15 uninterrupted minutes. I'd like you to try this fantasy for yourself. Imagine you're in a tiny desert isle alone and with nothing to do. A ship will be coming in 2 or 3 days and you have enough to eat until then. But there's no one to talk to, nothing to work with, just a couple of days to pass while you look out of the sea. At first, your mind might be empty, but give it a little time, and when something comes up, pick up your pen and start writing. What happened? Did you get bored? Did you find your thinking slip into a different mode? Liam couldn't think of anything at first. But then he started remembering some ideas he'd forgotten, and then the floodgates opened. Liam wanted to organize international traveling children's theatre that visited small communities and auditioned local children for roles in each play. I heard of some people doing that in the US, and the kids worked all year to get good grades so they'd be eligible to audition. It had an amazing effect on the children. Some of them started to write plays, and they didn't even like reading before that. There's a way to replicate traveling theatres in every region of the world. Even in the Gobi Desert, there's a tradition that would be thousands of years old of traveling actors. It's such a big thing when they come down to town. The theatre could even be a school if none existed. He went on to draw some diagrams to show me a model he wanted to build that would help physics teachers explain the fifth and sixth dimensions. I have to be honest and say, I think that's what he said. After that, he told me about a documentary he'd seen that Indians who lived in the Amazon basin of South America and played tiny flutes with a special haunting tone, and he dreamt up some new musical instruments based on what he saw that would create a similar haunting sound. Desert Island Fantasy had created an open space away from problem solving and made room for his ideas to start flying. He drew while he spoke. The pages he wrote on were soon covered with sketches and diagrams, and his face was lit up. He continued to eagerly explain his ideas, and he had a big smile on his face the whole time. Wow, I said. We slowed down. You're a one-man marching band of good ideas. Yes, he sighed. And he started looking serious again. They're just ideas, and that's what they'll have to remain. His smile was gone. The look of excitement had disappeared. And he was caught in his conflict again. You look like recess just ended and it's back to the classroom. That's how I feel now while I reflect on my dissatisfaction. When I'm in those office troubleshooting, I am very high energy, like a hockey player in a tough game. Well, sort of. There's still not the feeling that made you laugh. You look thoughtful, even a little curious. Guess it's different. I've never understood alternating currently am. Can you explain it to me? I just changed the question and asked on the spot. He was a little surprised, but he made some attempts to enlighten me. Well, you could say it's an electric current that reverses direction on a regular basis. Why are you asking me this all of a sudden? I'm thinking up a life design model that might bump you out of that one track problem solving mode. At least sometimes. Good idea. But I need a different job. You never know, I said. So let's understand what's been happening. She's been challenging him and she's telling us to play this fantasy game where 15 minutes of nothingness, absolutely no diversion. And then what would we like to do? Just simply think of it as what is interesting you and start writing. This man came up with a diagram and 100 things that came up in his mind. Let's see your mind, what it does come out with. And do not make it like, I want to get thinner or I want to get a job. No, not generic stuff. What are you passionate about? Nail it. Like, what exactly is it that you want to do? Not like vaguish stuff. Be clear and let your mind play around. Don't restrict it. No, this is not society conscious. This is not something which I can do. No, nothing like that. Just looking out and doing what you think you like to do. Because your mind is empty, you have time, and all you do is just start writing. Don't restrict yourself. It's therapeutic, I can tell you, because when you unleash your energy, when you start writing without any strings attached, you are going to create magic. And believe me, this magic writing, whatever you will write, will help you see who you are. It will help you analyze yourself very, very clearly. And nothing like knowing ourselves, what are we? Right now, we depend upon therapists and people and counselors and maybe society to tell us who we are. But high time we discover who we really are beyond people's tinted glasses, just looking clearly into our soul. It'll be an amazing overview of yourself. Now, the alternating current life design model. This model has no calendar, no schedule connected to it, and it can mean nothing or everything and simple as something which is remember to step over to a window and look in the distance for a few minutes just to see if another kind of brain would like a moment or two. Pulling out your index cards or Rolodex cards that make up your portable dream deck is a good alternative. And if you work at home, you can schedule regular sit-downs with your day book. It's hard to care about things that don't have a real life outcome. One kind of scanner obviously just likes to learn, I confess. I feel like those people are just fooling around and there's work to be done. So जो लोग बोलते हैं ना हर समय सीखने का ही मन करता है, good. लेकिन सीख के इम्प्लीमेंट कर रहे हो कि सिर्फ सीखे जा रहे हो? अगर सिर्फ सीख रहे हो तो ऊपरा ऊपरी ज्ञान रहेगा, इम्प्लीमेंट कर रहे हो तो एक्सपीरियंस बन जाओगे, then your experiences will refine you, right? So again, very very important कि अगर आपको सिर्फ अपने आप को बोल रहे हो I'm a learner or I'm a seeker, so that's incomplete. I'm a seeker and a doer. मैं बहुत कुछ सीखता हूँ और बहुत कुछ इम्प्लीमेंट करता हूँ. That's amazing. Theoretical scientists know non-directed thinking can be an excellent way of finding things you didn't know you were looking for. The scientific father of a friend said it very clearly. Theoretical scientists come up with more original ideas than applied scientists, and we get nominated for more Nobel Prizes. That's because we never assume anything and we don't have a preconceived solution in our mind when trying to find answers to our biggest puzzles. Applied scientists, like those at distance research societies, are always looking for a cure, and they really have to be single-minded. But many cures are founded when you're not looking for them. That's the most important. Leanne was smiling slightly. It's a lot of fun to think about things in that non-directed way, he acknowledged. But it's worlds away from what I'm comfortable with. I can relax and I can do that thing I'm thinking on long walks. But I usually move a lot faster than that rest of the time. But I wasn't talking about relaxing. I went to a computer to find an interview I'd done with another plate spinner and I pulled it up on the screen for Liam to read. So while Liam reads that also, he read that, let's read once again. So for me, once again, for all of you the first time, Elizabeth's story to understand what is a plate spinner. Now, Elizabeth feels best when she moves fast. In fact, it's actually painful for her to move at a slower pace. It's as big a strain for Elizabeth to use half ability as it is for a cat to climb a hill using half a cylinder, she wrote. I've always had several things going at once. I get very bored and stressed if I try to do only one thing. For instance, when I was in high school, I took dance, taught dance, and worked at a hamburger joint, all while taking a full school load, like physics and chemistry. On top of that, I was responsible for the family dinner every evening, as well as heavy housework. When I went to college, I took 18 to 20 hours per semester, taught dance, studied dance, became a varsity gymnast, taught gymnastics, and became a gymnastics judge so I could judge meets. My first degree major was psychology with a biology minor, and darn it, since I still lived at home, I still had all those heavy household responsibilities. I typically read 3 books at once, and of course, magazines. When things get hairy, and believe me, they get hairy, I don't burn out. I get extremely focused and take actions. And it's not fun to be thrown in crisis mode, but I can laugh at the pickle I've gotten myself, and only the crisis passes. I like my schedule to be full, challenging, and varied, but not so tight that I'm late for things. I hate to be late. I have figured out 3 things going on at once are a nice balance for me, especially now that I'm raising children. Liam was impressed. But what reminded me of Elizabeth as I described my alternating life, current life model was a final statement. One key for me is I like for my entire system of mind and body to be completely used. I like to do things that are different from one another at the same time. I like my body to be exercised fully. I like for my mind to be learning, doing, absorbing different things at the same time. Otherwise, I get frightfully bored. And I feel like part of me is dying on the vine. Yes, Liam said. I never thought of it that way. That's what I've been feeling. How about using the alternating current model for time outs when you can develop all those great ideas of yours? Liam seemed embarrassed. I looked at him questioningly. What is the real problem? Liam says, I'm fake. The real problem isn't that I have no time. The real problem is that I'd start one of those projects and have a great time, but after I designed it and understood and gave it a try, if it really worked, I'd lose interest and walk away. Oh, is that all? I laughed. That's not a problem. You just need to hand your projects off to someone else. Just teach others how to do them. In fact, teach some teachers how to do them to say that you can keep your idea going. Then you can go start something else. His face lit up again and he told me another of his ideas. He wanted to work with the economies of impoverished mountain communities in the Himalayas, where he had spent a year after college. The idea involved new techniques for surface mining and a plan for setting up a mobile training until that could go to any location, train the local people to teach everyone in the village how to do it. I love training teachers. That really keeps you free, doesn't it? We were talking about the tool I mentioned in chapter 4, commitment phobia, the learn, try, teach, leave method of project management. So for those of you who don't remember what it was all about, let's understand this once more. So one thing is we've understood from Elizabeth's story that she likes to be fully busy, and that's how Liam also felt. And he actually said and then I think I'm a fake. Why? I have too much to do at the same time, and I don't have I talk about it, but I don't do it. So I think I'm a fake. So, I have gigantic ideas, but I never come around to doing them. And that in a way is a problem. And whenever I'm coming around to doing them, I walk away. So that's not the problem. The problem is that he has too much going on in his mind and he doesn't know how to take it forward. And he knows something that he loves. Now, for people like him, this LTTL system works. People as fast as plate spinners often have Liam's dilemma of being stuck in one role when they were born to handle a dozen roles. The best use of a plate spinner's talent is its LTTL system. Using this tool, someone like Liam is brought into a department to troubleshoot. He learns that when he needs to know to fix the problems. Then he develops some new systems which he thinks will help the department and tries them to make sure they work. Once he's sure they'll straighten out the problems, he teaches someone in the department how to use them. Then he heads off to another department, leaving employee manuals in his wake. The plate spinner would be happy because he'd get to learn, to invent, and to test his inventions. He'd like to get to teach also, and that would be all he'd be asked to do. This would be a delightful job for the plate spinner, and the boss would have a company that kept getting more and more productive. Liam loved the idea, but he was pretty sure no one would hire him for a job like that. He was probably right. It looked like he'd have to start his own business one day if he could get out from under his workload of 10 plus hours a day. It looks possible, but I had a plan. Now, what is the plan? Very simple. The plan is win hearts to start your own business. So, next page, please. So, even if we are plate spinners, we can usually get a good job as a troubleshooter. But it's not easy to find one that lets you use all your talents, or as Elizabeth described it, your entire system of mind and body. You might get lucky and find an exception, but few companies are set up to properly utilize a multi-talented scanner. How do you make the transition to a business of your own? You save your money, you win some hearts, you build for your future. Liam looked confused when I said to him, "Win some hearts?" he asked. That's what I said. Because I knew that if a plate spinner spends 99% of his time in problem solving mode, he'd spend 200% if he had his own business. And no scanner is worse at delegating than the plate spinner. The success teams I started in my first workshops back in the 70s are unbeatable when it comes to accountability and moral support. But the kind of team Liam needed had something else that was very special. I read about this kind of support in a book about Jim Clark, the inventor of the first big internet browser, Netscape, and many believe the man who created the dot-com bubble of the 1990s almost single-handedly. You can read his story in the net, Next Thing by Michael Lewis. Clark was a brilliant engineer who had attracted dozens of following and other brilliant engineers because they loved the way he thought. Most of them worked for companies Clark had basically created and then cashed out from and abandoned. From the description, he sounded like a spinner on steroids. Now, Clark's inability to live without motion and change had gotten him to where he was, says the author. He needed change even more than the money that came from the change. Clark had started out as an engineer, and back then, engineers weren't considered very important by the money people and were paid accordingly. But by 2000, when the book was written, Clark was worth hundreds and millions of dollars, about to be worth more. He made his money starting new companies, and he used the LTTL method I had described to Liam, and he left out a few letters. It began when he walked out of a company that tried to control him more than he liked, and he discovered, to his surprise, the best engineers in that company followed him. They loved working with him. So he started the interesting system of operating his new companies in the learn, try, teach, and leave model. But he got rid of all the letters, but the first and the last. He learned, or he figured out, that there was a need for a new kind of software concept and told his engineers what he thought it should be. After that, he simply never tried, nor did he teach the method or anything. He just left, and the engineers did the rest. Clark's story is amazing. It was far grander than anything Liam wanted, but the idea of winning over the hearts of those engineers and the power it gave Clark to make his ideas into reality wasn't lost on him. I never figured out how Clark got them to follow him. Liam smiled. It's easy. All you have to do is respect them enough to give them their heads and just turn them loose to solve problems on their own. And you have to be smart enough to understand the value of the solutions and follow anyone who did that to me too. Ah, well then let me ask you something. Would anyone want to follow you? He laughed. I'm a loner. I only know engineers when they come to me with problems. It's time to change that, don't you think? He shrugged. I knew that I was up against. One thing I noticed in plate spinners is that usually loners like Liam. They're so competent that they've never learned how to delegate and are impatient with people who don't do the job as well as they do. Liam shrugged again when I said to him. He then said, I guess you're the smarter engineer, I know. Well, in my unit at my company, probably yes. It's time to widen your social circle, isn't it? No time. So So I gave him a plan of action. First, start a class where you teach the best engineers in your present company how to solve their own problems. After a while, they will give you a little more time. Second, watch those engineers see you when you love to work, when you leave the company. And what would I do with those people if they follow me out? Teach them to carry out these great ideas you told me. And how would I pay them? You wouldn't. You'd have a company that would pay them, a Himalayan mining company, an international touring theater company. Those businesses wouldn't make enough money to pay the electric bills. Anyway, I won't know which one to start first. So, all right. Tomorrow, you and me can understand that which are the 10 talents in search of a job description. Of course, I'm not saying that we're looking for jobs, but by now we are pretty much aware which kind of scanner we are. Anyway, the journey of which kind of scanner doesn't end here. There's many more journeys coming up. So until we do that, let's just hatch on the idea and play the fantasy game today. Very important for us to know where are we heading. Rahul, so that'll be all for today morning in this particular book, Time for a Surya Namaskar. But tomorrow will be yet another story. So do play the game and see what your beautiful mind comes up with. I'm sure a lot of radical ideas are coming up with. And it doesn't have to be with your profession. If you're a graphic designer and it comes to be something with medicine, go for it. You never know what's coming your way. Maybe it comes with biology, maybe it comes with some anthropology. You never know what's going to be coming for. See it, be open and receptive, and see where your mind oodles. All right, time for us to go for a sun salutations.
The Surya Namaskar with mantras. Om Mitraye Namaha. Om Ravaye Namaha. Om Suryaye Namaha. Om Bhanave Namaha. Om Khagaye Namaha. Om Pushne Namaha. Om Hiranyagarbhaye Namaha. Om Marichaye Namaha. Om Adityay Namaha. Om Savitre Namaha. Om Arkay Namaha. Om Bhaskaray Namaha. Salutations to the universal friend. Salutations to the resplendent sun. Salutations to the energy that induces activity within us. Salutations to the one who illumines. Salutations to the sun moving across the sky. Salutations to the giver of strength. Salutations to the golden cosmic self. Salutations to the Lord of the dawn. Salutations to the son of Aditi, the cosmic mother. Salutations to the benevolent mother. Salutations to the energy that we praise, and to the one who guides us to salvation. The sun salutation now with the names of the postures, both in Sanskrit and English. Pranamasan, Hastuthanasan, Madhastasan, left leg back, Ashvasanchalasan, Parvatasan, and hold this position, and now slowly progressing into the deeper version of Parvatasan, Adho Mukh Shvanasan. Ashtang Namaskar, Bhujangasan, Parvatasan, left forward Ashvasanchalasan, Padahastasan, Hastuthanasan, Pranamasan. On the right side, prayer position, raised arms pose, hand to feet pose, right leg back, equestrian pose, mountain pose, hold mountain pose, and slowly moving into the deeper version of mountain, the downward facing dog. Salute with 8 limbs. Cobra. Press back to mountain. Right forward, equestrian pose. Hand to feet pose. Raised arms position. Prayer pose. One round of the sun salutation with awareness on the breathing. So exhaling our hands to the chest, pranam. Inhaling as we bend back. We exhale as we fold forward. Left leg back, inhale as we're arching back. Exhale into the forward. Hold the breath for knees, chest, chin. Inhale as we arch back. Exhale into the forward. Left leg forward, inhale. This is a back bend. Exhale whenever we bend forward. Inhale as we bend back. Exhale, hands to the chest. And on the right, deep breathing. Exhale. A deep inhale. A long exhale. Right leg back with an inhale. And exhale. Hold the breath. Inhale. And exhale. Right leg forward with a deep inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale.
Wonderful. Time for our letting go. Time for us to understand. We yesterday began a chapter, namely grief, where we spoke about how each one of us is allowing the grief to settle in our lives. But we also talked about that today will be the powerful day that each one of us is going to understand how to handle loss. So we had done this bit. You have to, I think, go on to the chapter. Maybe it's before. It says handling loss. No, sir. No, fear, you've gone much ahead, Rahul, sir. It says handling loss. So till the time he brings the book in, let's start reading the chapter without delay. Because of the nature of attachment, the first state preceding the actual experiencing of loss is that of fear or loss. This is usually defended in one or two ways. Yes, here we are. One or two ways. One is to increase the intensity of the attachment by ever persistent attempts to strengthen the bonds. This approach is based on the fantasy that the greater the bond, the less likelihood of loss. However, this is the very maneuver that often precipitates loss in personal relationships because the other person struggles to be free of the possessive attachment and the amount of restrictive control they feel being placed upon them. Thus, because what we hold in mind tends to manifest, the fear of a loss can paradoxically be the mechanism of bringing about that loss. What do we understand from this? क्या होता है आधी बार we are thinking कि जितना bond strong होगा उतना problem नहीं होगा because it will be all smooth, everything will be great. But actually it's उल्टा. अगर आप ज़्यादा attached हो in a particular relationship, whenever that relationship is about to fade, it will give you much more problem. So the very fact कि हम बोलते हैं relationship को बहुत strengthen करना है is all right, but जहाँ वो possessiveness आ जाती है, this is my child, my parent, my spouse, and when you want to start controlling them, that okay, do this, do this, do this, do this, that's when your mind starts to manifest that loss. Okay, मेरे बच्चे ने या मेरे husband ने या मेरे parent ने ये काम नहीं किया, तो क्या होगा? And this is a point where you're already beginning to feel lost in your relationship. So first thing is to understand we have to stop controlling. We have to stop being so possessive. Second way, the fear of loss is handled is by the psychological mechanism of denial, which is in common language called playing ostrich. We see this around us every day in its various forms of refusing to face the inevitable. All the warning signs are there, but the person does not take heed. Thus, the man who's obviously in the process of losing his job tends not to notice. The partners in a marriage that is going down the drain take no corrective action. The person with a serious disease ignores all of the symptoms and avoids medical attention. The politicians fail to look at the social problems, hoping they will go away. Whole countries are oblivious to the precarious state of existence. Example 9/11 attack. The motorist ignores the ominous warning signals of a misbehaving engine. We have all experienced regret that we didn't pay attention to the warning signals of trouble ahead. Now, what is this happening? We are just ignoring, thinking, okay, general ho raha hai, it's okay, kuch bhi nahi hai, it's all right, fine. Many times health is ignored. आपको लगता है कि अरे कुछ नहीं, it's just gastric pain, okay, it's just nothing, the body is just giving you this, just it's okay, let's ignore. ठीक हो जाएगा, सब ठीक हो जाएगा. Not realizing it could be budding into something huge. And बाद में regret होएगा कि अरे we didn't pay attention at the right time at the right thing. Now, to handle the fear of loss, we have to look at what purpose the external person or object serves in our life. What emotional need is being fulfilled? What emotions would arise when we lose the object or the person? Loss can be anticipated, and we can handle the various fears associated with the sense of loss by disassembling the emotional complexes that they represent and letting go of the individual component feelings. Now, let's say, for example, that you have a pet dog to which you have been attached to many, many years. It is obvious that old Rover is getting old. You find that you don't have to think about his advanced age, feeling uncomfortable with the prospect of his death and putting it out of mind. Now, as you catch yourself doing this, you realize that these feelings are warning signals and that you're not handling the situation well. And so you ask yourself, what purpose is the dog serving in my life? What is his emotional service to me? Love, companionship, devotion, amusement, diversion? Will losing the dog leave these personal emotion needs unfulfilled? In looking at this, some of the fear can be acknowledged and relinquished. Once the fear is let go, you don't have to resort to denial and pretend to yourself that Rover will live forever. Do you see kitna beautifully they have analyzed this? Few questions. डर के पहले ही डर किस बात का है? क्या हो जाएगा worst to worst? What's going to happen? कितनी attachment है? क्या होगा? Another emotion associated with grief and mourning is that of anger. The loss of that which is important frequently brings up a feeling of rage, which may be projected into the world, society, individuals, and ultimately God, who's held to be responsible for the nature of the universe. Anger results from prior refusal to accept the fact that all relationships and possessions in this life are transitory. Even the physical body, which is our biggest attachment, eventually has to be relinquished, as everyone is aware. So हम क्या करते हैं? Blame game शुरू कर देते हैं. अरे भगवान ने नहीं दिया, बहुत कम लाइफ दी, ये कर दिया, कोविड मिल गया, अभी कोई टाइम था जाने का, ऐसा हो गया, वैसा हो गया, स्पेशली बाय द बॉडी, अरे बीमारी क्यों आ गई? क्योंकि हमारी अटैचमेंट इस बॉडी से इतनी ज्यादा है, राइट? वी डोंट रियलाइज कि बॉडी नहीं भी है तो उस इंसान का लव एंड लाइट तो अपना हमारे पास रहेगा ही, राइट? और हमें समझ में नहीं आता. नेक्स्ट, we feel that what has become important or comforting to us is a permanent attachment. Consequently, when that illusion is threatened, there is anger, resentment, self-pity, feelings that can result in chronic bitterness. Impotent rage is associated with a desire to change the nature of the world and the impossibility of doing so. In facing this fact of existence, a major loss can therefore bring about a shift in our philosophical position. One major loss can awaken us to the nature of all attachments and all relationships, or we may again deny the obvious fact that all relations are transitory and furiously re-intensify existing bonds to compensate for the loss. This is a huge thing. I don't know how many of you have gone through it. One of my your friends, he lost his mother. And ekdam se one relationship he lost and he awakened and, now I need to spend more time at home. Mama used to say, Aja beta. And I would say, I'm working. And now he gives much more time to his wife and his daughters just because of the fact that now he awakened to the realization of the other relationships. And now he doesn't deny the obvious fact. Now he says, ki, haan, life is temporary, it's not permanent, so why not make the most of it? And that's when he's trying to compensate for the loss of his mother. But that is also denial, all right? Now, a part of handling denial of the inevitability of loss is seen through attempts at manipulation. In fantasy, the mind tries to develop tactics so as to avoid the loss. This may take the form of becoming gooder or doing hard work, being more honest, being more preserving, being more loyal. In religious persons, this can take the form of trying to manipulate God by promises and bargains. I don't know how many of you have seen, भगवान तू मेरा ये विश पूरा कर दे तो इतना रुपया चढ़ा देंगे या इतना दान कर देंगे, इतना ये कर देंगे, समाज में मैं इतना कर रहा हूँ तो मेरे लिए तो अच्छा होना ही चाहिए, मैं तो इतना अच्छे मन का हूँ, मेरे लिए तो होना ही चाहिए. You're trying to bargain. You know, आपको लग रहा है कि अरे I can get a better deal. And आपको लगता है कि actually work करेगा भी. Now in relationships, it may take the form of overcompensatory behavior. The spouse becomes more dutiful, loving, attentive in an attempt to prevent a breakup. The inattentive husband suddenly starts bringing home gifts and flowers instead of getting the root cause of the problems. When the denial breaks down, the manipulations have not worked, and the fear has been passed through, and the depression itself, the actual process of mourning and grief takes place. So कभी भी relationships खट्टे हो रहे हैं तो उनको ठीक करने के लिए you can't start indulging in gifts and dinners and candlelight things and going out and being special attention. What you have to give attention is to the root cause. कि problem क्यों आ रही है? What is the problem? That is to be looked into, not superficial ऊपर taping it up. All of these emotional stages can be worked through much more rapidly by the process of letting go, in which the inevitability of the emotion of grief is surrendered to and replaced by a willingness to let go of resistance and let the process pass through and complete itself. अगर हम किसी चीज को रोकेंगे तो वो वहीं रुक जाएगा और जब आएगा तो एकदम बहुत ज्यादा रूप में आएगा. तो इसीलिए प्लीज लेट गो एंड स्टार्ट फ्लोइंग, एंड जो आ रहा है उसको आने दो. लेट द प्रोसेस कंप्लीट इटसेल्फ. अगर फीलिंग्स आ रही हैं, सैलाब उतर लें दो. रोना आ रहा है, रो लें दो. किसने बोला कि नहीं रोना? किसने बोला बॉयज आर स्ट्रॉन्गर, गर्ल्स आर वीकर? प्लीज लेट इट गो. Instead of denying and resistance, you plunge into it and get over it. खत्म करो ना एक बार को, रो के खत्म करो. You have a good cry over old rover or the lost relationship and finish it off. Associated with the feeling of grief is always a variable amount of guilt. This is based on the fantasy that loss represents a punishment or that a different attitude or behavior would have been prevented it from happening. बहुत लोग बोलते हैं कुछ हमने खराब किया होगा ना, इस कर्मा खराब होगा, इसीलिए ये इतना कम उम्र में आदमी चला गया, या ऐसा हो गया, वैसा हो गया, हमें डिजर्व करते होंगे. नो, इट्स नॉट डिजर्व, इट्स नॉट अ पनिशमेंट, इट्स हिज लाइफ. आना था, जाना था. कोई जल्दी जाए, कुछ पहले आएगा. आपने कितने बच्चों को देखा होगा पैदा होते चले जाते हैं या 2-3 महीने में चले जाते हैं. दैट्स हाउ लाइफ इज. एवरी सोल हैज द कॉन्टैक्ट पॉइंट, द एंट्री एंड एग्जिट. It's okay. And you're feeling sad on somebody's death? Yes, I'm not saying become strong and understand the karma of life and don't cry. Okay, do that. But until the feeling, the emotion, the whatever guilt or whatever you're feeling is relinquished, the guilt can then recycle and refuel the anger and rage. The unacknowledged and the unrelinquished rage may be projected into others in the environment in the form of blame. Blame projected onto other relationship will then compound the loss of bringing about further loss. As I told you a couple of days back, I was working with somebody who was a rapist. यही हुआ exactly. But life में loss हुआ, वो अपने grief को समझ नहीं पाया, उसको guilt आ गया कि मेरी वजह से मेरी mom के साथ ये हुआ है, and ऐसा हुआ है. उसको गुस्सा आया कि उन लोगों ने ऐसा किया towards society, and then he said मैं भी निकालूंगा अपना, and the best thing is I will abuse women of this particular genre because इस genre ने मेरी mom के साथ ये किया था. And उसको समझ में नहीं आया, and this is what he was working. Blame game, rage, guilt, anger, angst, ये सब combine हो गया. And then what is happening? Further loss he lost. Loss of integrity, loss of your character, loss of your persona, so much. This happens frequently between marital partners and as a result of the death of a child. It has been reported that the divorce rate amongst parents who've lost children is as high as 90%. Because of the projection of blame, a severe loss is then compounded by another severe loss, that of a marital partner. An example of this type of reaction is the case of a 40-year-old woman. She had an excellent marriage for 20 years with an attentive, beautiful husband. Her youngest son developed leukemia. When he died, she went into grief and mourning, and more importantly, developed a rage reaction. It took the form of hatred. She hated the doctor, she hated the hospital, she hated God, she hated her husband and the existing children. Her rage became so uncontrollable that she became physically violent and threatening. Several times, the police had to be called to control her violent behavior. Finally, the other children left home out of fear of the chaos, physical abuse, and menacing emotional states. Her husband left no stone unturned in trying to help her with the rage, but she vented her fury upon him as well, violently attacking him on several occasions. Finally, in desperation and despair, he was driven from the home. The chaotic situation ultimately ended in divorce, in which the woman lost her home. It was almost 5 years before the rage subsided, at which time the woman had destroyed her whole life and now had to start over from scratch, rebuilding a new life. Did you see? Losing one child triggered off losing her husband, losing her other children, losing her house, losing her life. क्यों? अगली ने एक्सेप्ट नहीं किया ना कि ग्रीफ है. She didn't go through the entire process. क्या करना शुरू कर दिया? Blame. One thing is you can't blame, even अगर एक्सीडेंट में किसी की डेथ हो जाती है, गाड़ी के एक्सीडेंट में भी, you can't blame. होना था इसलिए हुआ है. Somebody becomes a tool, that's all. When all the negative emotions have been worked through, surrendered to, and let go of, relief finally occurs, and the former suffering is replaced by acceptance. Acceptance is different from resignation. In resignation, there are still residuals of the previous emotion left. There's reluctance and the delaying of the true recognition of the facts. Resignation says, I don't like it, but I have to put up with it. With acceptance, resistance to the true nature of the facts has been relinquished. Thus, one of the signs of acceptance is serenity. With acceptance, struggle is over and life begins anew. The energies that were bound up in the previous negative emotion are now freed up, so that the healthier aspect of the personality are now energized, re-energized. The creative aspects of the mind develops opportunities for new life situations and further options for growth and experience, accompanied by a new sense of aliveness. A well-known and widely practiced teaching is serenity prayer of the 12-step groups. सेरेनिटी प्रेयर ना, इसको आप लोग अंडरलाइन कर लीजिए, पिक्चर क्लिक कर लीजिए, पिक्चर शॉट कर लीजिए. बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. प्रोटेक्शन प्रेयर एंड सेरेनिटी प्रेयर, दो प्रेयर्स हैं, बहुत बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. कितना ब्यूटीफुल प्रेयर है, सो मीनिंगफुल. और अगर आप रोज बोलेंगे प्रेयर को या कहीं लिख देंगे, रोज पढ़ेंगे, तो आपके अंदर ऑटोमेटिक चेंज आना शुरू हो जाएगा कि मैं एक्सेप्ट कर पाऊं कि जो मैं नहीं बदल सकता हूं, जो मॉर्फीज लॉ है, कुछ है, वो रहेगा वैसे. आई कांट डू एनीथिंग अबाउट. मुझ में हिम्मत होनी चाहिए कि मैं चीजें में बदलाव ला पाऊं जहां मैं ला सकता हूं, और मुझ में इतनी अक्ल होनी चाहिए कि दोनों के बीच में अंतर क्या है मैं देख पाऊं. ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट प्रेयर है. Failure to work through any of the various emotions associated with mourning and loss can result in chronic stuckness in any of its components. प्रॉब्लम क्या होती है? जब क्रॉनिकली आप स्टक हो जाते हो, आपको बहुत सारी बीमारियां भी हो जाती है, बिकॉज आपकी फीलिंग्स इमोशंस को आपने रोक दिया है. अब बॉडी में अगर ब्लड रुक जाएगा तो वहां क्लॉट हो जाता है, राइट? मेडिकल वर्ल्ड में दैट्स व्हाट दे से. अब आपकी बॉडी में इमोशंस हैं, उनको जो फ्लो करते रहते हैं हर समय, उनको आपने रोक दिया तो क्या हो जाएगा? स्टॉपेज ऑफ एनर्जी हो जाएगा. आप डिनाइल कर रहे हो तो वहां आपने रोक दिया, उसको डिनाई कर दिया कि यू कांट फ्लो फर्दर. इस गिल्ट की वजह से आपकी लाइफ में डिसईज मैनिफेस्ट हो जाएगा. Chronic guilt or refusal to work through the emotions associated with loss can result in delayed grief reaction and physical dis-ease. सबसे कॉमन है बीमारी डिप्रेशन की आ जाती है. एक्सेप्टेंस नहीं कर पाते, सिर्फ अरे ऐसा हो गया, उसी दुनिया में स्टक हो जाते हो. The mechanisms behind this process explained in a later chapter on the relationship between mind and body. The suppressed energy of the unrelinquished emotions re-emerges through the body's endocrine and nervous system as an energetic imbalance, which impairs the flow of life energy through the body's acupuncture meridians. Very important to understand, हमारी बॉडी में मेरिडियंस होती हैं, हमारी बॉडी में एनर्जी ट्रैवल करती है. जब हम एनर्जी को सप्रेस करेंगे, हमारे अंदर कुछ और चीजें, केमिकल रिएक्शंस होते हैं, एंड आपकी पूरी बॉडी में इम्बैलेंस आ जाएगा बिकॉज आपने फ्लो को रोका है. This results in pathological change in various organs. It is a well-known fact that the death rate amongst the bereaved is much higher than that of general population, especially in the first year or two following the death of a spouse. आपने बहुत सारे बड़े उम्र के लोग देखे होंगे जो बहुत ज्यादा अटैच होते हैं अपने स्पाउस से, वो within some time they both go. अभी वो गए थे 6 महीने में वो चले गए. Why? Because they're so attached and they can't get over the loss. तो बॉडी में changes आते हैं and that person goes. One source of grief-related guilt is anger at the loved one for departing. बहुत लोग कि आप छोड़ के चले गए, मुझे क्या मतलब था. You can't, आप उसको एक blame करो जो चला गया. This is often suppressed because it seems irrational to the conscious mind. The virtues of the departed loved ones are enhanced and exaggerated in fantasy, and this discrepancy compounds the guilt. How could we be angry at such a wonderful person? There is guilt about being angry at the God, at author of universe, for having allowed a tragic event to take place. Please understand, if somebody's spouse is gone, he hasn't left you because of what he's left because it's his journey. But because you're his soul family and you've reincarnated with him for some reason, and now you're blaming him, there will be chemical changes in your body which may lead to depression or some kind of major fatal bimari, some disease, and you will also exit the world. You will find a platform to exit the world because you have anger pent up inside you. And this anger is the destroyer of life. When you're angry, you will always destroy. When you're happy, you will always make. Now, if that tragic event has happened, accept it as God's wish. Accept it as your husband's or wife's soul journey or your child's soul journey. A 60-year-old woman came to the office with multiple physical complaints. She had asthma attacks, allergies, bronchitis, frequent episodes of pneumonia, all kinds of breathing difficulties. During psychotherapy, it was revealed that her mother had died 22 years previously, and she stated that, curiously, she had no reaction to her mother's death. Oddly, although it was a responsibility, she had not ordered a headstone to be placed on her mother's grave. From information given, it was obvious that she had an extremely dependent relationship with her mother, with whom she was ambivalent because of the mother's refusal to fill all her dependency needs. It took many months for her to work through her massive denial, which she was associated with guilt over the anger at her mother for leaving her. The anger was directed inwardly at herself in the form of dis-ease, which also expressed her helplessness and her wish to cry out for her mother. The suppressed desire to cry for the mother loss led to a constant feeling that she could not breathe. She hated herself for the love-hate feelings of her mother. And the sum total of all her repressed emotions had re-emerged in the form of her physical, multiple respiratory symptoms and complaints, psychosomatic illnesses. And she worked through delayed mourning. The reaction to grief and loss began to surface. The extent of her resistance to working through these emotions and how that resistance had resulted in her physical symptoms became very clear to her. Eventually, she went for additional professional training to become a therapist working with the dying in a hospice program. Did you see the problems? She could not get over the fact that her mother had died. She did not even mourn. She had, in fact, no reaction. वो delayed reaction, गुस्से में बदला, बीमारी में बदला. She went through so much in her life because she had suppressed her emotion. I once again say suppressing and repressing of emotions is not allowed. Please do not become the victims. Do not blame other people. If something has happened, take it out. Please take it out. It's very, very important to take it out. Today, while we are talking about this, I also want to read this bit about preventing grief. अब कैसे हम grief को prevent कर सकते हैं? Let's understand. From the nature of the processes we have described, it becomes apparent that severe mourning loss, and the pathological reactions that may ensue can be prevented by early recognition and by preemptive surrender of the associated feelings while they are still mild and can be handled without excessive suffering. As we've seen, the basis of all mourning and loss is attachment, plus the denial of the transitory nature of all relationships. We can begin by looking at our lives, identifying those areas of attachment, and asking ourselves, what internal needs are they satisfying? What feelings would come up if I were to lose them? How can my inner emotional life be balanced so as to increase the extent, degree, and number of attachments on external objects and people? ये questions आपको लगेंगे उतने अमेजिंग नहीं, but they are very, very, very important. जब हम अपने आप से सवाल करते हैं कि क्या फीलिंग आएगी मुझे जब मैं इसको लूज कर दूंगा, या मेरे इनर इमोशनल लाइफ कैसे बैलेंस रहेगी जब ये लोग लाइफ में कम हो जाएंगे या ये चीजें कम हो जाएंगी, हाउ डू आई फील? कई बार लोगों को ग्रीफ होता है चीजों के खोने से भी. मेरी शादी की घड़ी थी, मेरे उसने उसने दी थी, ऐसा हुआ था, वैसा हुआ था, उसके बारे में भी लॉस होता है. हम तो बड़े रईस थे, पहले क्या लाइफ लिव करी, देखो आज कहाँ आ गए. पुराने अच्छे दिनों के लिए भी लॉस होता है, सिर्फ इंसानों के लिए नहीं होता, सिचुएशंस, इवेंट्स के लिए भी होता है. We can ask ourselves why we feel so incomplete. Why am I so empty within myself that I have to search for solutions in the form of attachment dependency to others? We can begin to look at our own inner areas of immaturity. Oh my God. Sorry for the glitches today morning, but that's okay. Today's meditation is about motivation by love. And that's what today we have been doing. So let's rewind that. So let's take a deep breath in. Deep breath out. In. And out. One more time. Take a deep breath in and out. Life is magical. Life is beautiful. Life is a journey. Life is creation. And life is happiness. I am motivated by love. Resentment, criticism, guilt, and fear come from blaming others and not taking responsibility for our own experiences. I no longer blame. I no longer resent. I no longer criticize. And I take full responsibility for my life the way it's meant to be. Whatever has happened in my life, situations, people, relationships, I take responsibility for each one coming out, turning around the way it did. Because deep inside, I know I have willed it to happen for my growth, for my learning, for my evolution. And deep inside, I also know it was motivated by love, because that is what was required for me in this point of time in my life's journey. I release from within me all bitterness and resentment. I affirm that I am totally willing to freely forgive everyone. If you think of anyone who may have harmed you in any way at any point in your lifetime, think of that person. Now let's bless that person with love and release him or her. Think of the person in front of you and simply send him or her healing love lights, love-filled lights, blessings, Lots of love to him and her, and just say, I forgive you, and let's let go. Nobody can take anything from you that is rightfully yours. And that you know. That which belongs to you will always return to you in the divine right order. If something does not come back to you, it wasn't meant to come back. So let it loose, free it. Accept this with peace. Why should I be so attached to anything, even though I may have given it birth or I may have a blood relation? Why should I? Does it serve me any purpose? Am I doing myself a favor by holding on to the relationship so tight? Can I let go? Can I accept this with peace? Can I dissolve the resentment, which is so highly important? When I stop resenting, my life is so much better. Can I drop it? Can I trust myself? Can I tell myself that I am safe? That I am motivated by love? And when I stop controlling, when I stop giving directions, when I trust the process of life, when I start trusting my loved ones to take the best decision for themselves with their divine guidance, why should I become a controller? I deserve unconditional love. So let me attract the unconditional love. Let me attract people loving me for who I am. Because I am a person who loves unconditionally, whether you go wrong or whether you go right. I truly have your back. And that's what I request others only to love me back. And that's my hope and that's my wish to my divine self. Requesting it to always nurture and guide me so that I am motivated by love and not a controller, that my smaller self doesn't take precedence over my larger self. Let the divine in me always guide me and let the small self of me always be on the back burner because I want to drop my ego. And I have dropped my ego right here, right now. And so it is. Let's bow our heads in gratitude towards Mother Earth. Let's thank her for enhancing us with so many virtues every single day, for blessing us with more love, more light, more power, more abundance, more healing blessings. And let's look at the eye level and thank our life for it's been wonderful, remarkable, delightful. So many ups and downs, seas and soars, so much we've seen, all worth because we are who we are because of each one of them. So thank you, dear life and lives that we have lived. Thank you, present, for reinforcing the new learning, the new beginnings on this beautiful day, on this magical morning. And thank you, future. You are absolutely radiating, joyful, and blessed because you are being made today's intentions. So we have no doubt you're going to be absolutely magical, inspirational. Let's expand our hands towards the universe. Dear universe, thank you for having my back. Dear divinities, thank you for blessing us with the choicest of blessings. Dear angels and guardians, thank you for ensuring we are guided and we are blessed and protected. Dear universe, thank you for introducing us to serenity prayer. Dear universe, thank you for including us in the cosmic dance, the cosmic Leela. Dear universe, thank you for all that you keep blessing us with. We're truly each blessed, delighted, and enlightened. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's fold our hands together and be grateful for everything from heavens to earth. To our parents, to our grandparents, to our lineage, to our life around us, to our children, to everyone around us. Thank you for being a part of our life, for making us learn. And thank you, life, for being so wonderful. Let's thank the energy that flows in us, to the body organs that work so beautifully, so magically, so effortlessly. Let's thank and bless each Sangha Mitra for who they are, what they're turning into, and may each one be motivated by love, love, and love. Lots of love, light, and blessings. Ruchi, Vijayji, Jitendraji, Kamakshi, Swendraji, Akshay, Manisha, Anita, Ushaji, Richa, Nikita, Ritu, Shami, Rahul sir, Amrita ma'am, to all sentient beings and to all Sangha Mitras doing this virtually. Lots of love and lots of light. Be blessed, my loved ones. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Any questions? Otherwise, we meet each other tomorrow. Today is the 100th day, so 3 weeks to go. And let's make these 3 weeks count and let's make them into beautiful beginnings. Of course, we will have the new year in this. So I will be seeing you on the 1st of January as well, to those of you who are logging in. And those of you who are going to take it easy and wake up at the session later, more than fine. So we still have time for that. So lots of love and light. Take care and keep being blessed. Lots of love.